Welcome, you're listening to Jay's Analysis. One of the areas that nobody in independent media ever touches on is that of the paparazzi. And not just paparazzi, but also what you might call comedic terrorism. When I was in high school, we would do all kinds of pranks and antics on the school and actually got in trouble pretty severely for some of the stuff we did. I won't go into those stories. Some of them might actually ruin my future in independent media. But I have with me two guys from the UK who are well experienced in the subjects of comedy, terror, paparazzi, and so forth. And we're going to be talking to both of them. The first is Charles Pycraft. Charles was a paparazzo for over 10 years. So he's going to have some really interesting, wild stories. And I'm sure now he is a freelance London-based photographer. And he does a lot of work in PR, and he's got a very extensive background. It would take me a good while to read all this, but he also, let's see, flipping through all these papers here. I've got like a stack of papers on all your work here. I don't even know how to begin this, just because you've got so many neat things that you've done. I think it's going to be cool to talk about that. And we also have Bali, and Hello. He goes by the handle Conspiracy Realist. And for unspecified reasons, we can't go into all of his background in details. But both of these guys together have done some pretty stuff that nobody else does. I'll put it that way. So they're infamous, to put it simply. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're really good, Jay. Good to talk to you.
Likewise. Let's start it off, I think, I want to ask Charles about the paparazzo. Right. How do you become this? I mean, I think 99.9% of the population doesn't know about this. They have no idea what it's like. How does a person even become that?
It's not kind of big like it used to be. I think it was was it Dolce Vita was the kind of, going back to the
movie, yeah. Right.
Kind of, the Italian kind of, based on annoying kind of mosquito. I think that was where the word comes from. But from the mid-90s, it became very popular as kind of star photographers broke away from the newspapers. There was a guy called Darren Lyons who set up Big Pictures, and that was a massive catalyst in this country. And then a lot of people got drawn into it. He did a documentary. The documentary was very exaggerated, him flying around in helicopters and pretending to be very rich. And that sort of generated more and more interest. Obviously, the money that people were making from Diana before the papers were paying their photographers to do that, then they went freelance and started selling it direct. And that market probably peaked around 2007 when everything became more basically online and the newspapers could no longer control the story and hold it back for weeks. And now it's
Did the Diana situation hurt, or did it aid the paparazzo situation?
It hurt it at the time. I mean, I wasn't working in sort of that business until 99, so I think it was pretty damaging at that time. But then when she went, they had to replace her with hundreds more sort of mini celebrities. So Posh and the Beckhams became their sort of, celebrity replacement.
So you got into this post Diana, and I watched the clip that you had from the current TV episode. That was really good. I'll put that in the links. But it was difficult, for the first 2 or 3 years, and then you finally started getting some breaks and selling the pictures. What caused the first couple breaks that you had?
When I first started, it was just kind of, just living on kind of canapes and champagne, going to parties every week, and, it was a lot of fun. You weren't really making any money. But then around 2003, I got the first picture of Prince Harry drinking, and they had you couldn't photograph Prince Harry and William until he was 18 and William was 21. So he was 18 in 2003 and William was 21. So I got the first picture of him having a bottle, drink with a guy from a band I was promoting. And then once that one kind of broke, then more and more stories came out on the Royals. So that was my first kind of breaking picture. And then later him at one of these China White kind of polo kind of parties, and then later the Comedy Terrace that year. So it's just kind of luck. It just started to kind of happen.
So did you have to go and schmooze, or were you just kind of hanging around in the alleys and sneaking about, or was it all the above?
Actually, that first story, I was in a chauffeur-driven Mercedes with a couple of millionaire friends of mine drinking champagne because they got me into this party to promote their band. So it wasn't really in alleyways; it was in pretty kind of exclusive polo alleyways.
Yeah.
Well, I know that if a lot of the Hollywood parties, if it's A-listers, they don't let anybody bring their phones in, right? Because they don't want these kind of pictures getting out.
They didn't really have phones back in 2000,
right.
Phones, so it was kind of just going into digital at that time. But I mean, as soon as I took that picture of him drinking, the place went into lockdown. It was obviously too late to have done it, but the PRs kind of go crazy when you've got those kind of pictures,
Well, one of the things that I think is great about this is that, as we were talking about in chat beforehand, that the media itself is so preposterous and so ridiculous that I think the role that you serve is actually served, because you're not a paparazzo anymore, but that role, I think, is good in the sense that we should be making fun of these people. I mean, celebrity culture is ridiculous. It's a tool of social engineering. It's preposterous. So it should be lampooned as well as the rest of media. So I think it's great that there are people that play this role of sort of, comedy terrorist or paparazzi terrorist, right? But it started getting a bad name, as you said, after after Diana. But you had a couple really big hits, right? That garnered a pretty good return.
Well, financially, the Sienna Miller, Orlando Bloom was, you could say like $100,000. That kind of, that kind of price. It was after the 7/7 terrorist thing in 2005, so it was the first kind of big celebrity story. And that kind of looked like they were kissing, and they'd been in a relationship before that, just because they got the right angle, but they weren't. But they put it out as it's a new romance, and you just get that right angle at the right time and place, and those stories used to just kind of explode at that time, you know what I mean?
So let me ask you both this. So here we are, and it's almost like everything is satire now. Everything is fake news, just total high-octane psyops. What is the situation with fake news now? Why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, go on, you go, Charles.
Yeah, no, you have a start.
Oh, okay. They just can't keep the lid on it anymore. I mean, since 2007, everyone's their own citizen journalist. Everyone's their own paparazzo. Mm-hmm. People are out on the streets with their camera phones, filming celebrities behaving badly, falling out of cars. You just can't compete with that. It doesn't. the kind of low grade recording of the event gives it authenticity as well. People are much more likely to believe it. And you see it with these fake terror attacks. The camera's always at the wrong aspect. It's always got the blacked out at the sides, and that's part of the trick of the authenticity. They're kind of using these tricks to kind of legitimize fake news in a way,
right?
But these tricks are as old as the hills, really.
Well, I was going to say, I bet you guys would be really good at recognizing the fakery.
Yeah, pretty much. Go on, Charles.
Yeah, and I mean that's when I started questioning a lot of what I was doing. Obviously, when you're making a lot of money and the stories are a lot of fun, it's quite entertaining. And then I think it was 2011, the News of the World went down. There used to be like a battering ram for all the big stories that used to go through. But then after that, it was a bit like, the government wanted full control of the media. They didn't want, as much as people didn't like Murdoch, he still did kind of expose some pretty rich and powerful people like Max Mosley with his dominatrixes and stuff like that. Some pretty bad sort of stories. And they just those kind of people didn't want that kind of power, so they did this whole hacked off campaign, and so they wanted to protect, celebrities' privacy. Fair enough, but a lot of it wasn't always public interest, because some of these people kind of did need exposing, and now it's very hard to do that. So you just get a lot of kind of bullshit PR stories that are kind of made to look a bit real, but they're not really real.
I was going to ask.
But it's
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. Go on.
No.
Well, I was going to say the rise of the alternative media is because the legitimate quote unquote alternative media has been killed off by the establishment and the state.
Right.
They have killed it off. So that to hear the voice, to hear the truth, it has to come from the alternative media now. There's no mainstream that supports it.
Yeah, and that's the mainstream is going to have to try to become independent. That's really the only way that they're going to be able to continue the propaganda. Can you guys, for us American, a large portion of my audience is American, can you decode that giant UK hacking tabloid scandal? I mean, it was so big, and it was in the news here too, but it was very confusing, and I think a lot of people were, unclear of exactly what was going on and who were the players there, and was this some sort of a deep state thing, or do you know? Can you unpack that?
Yeah, I'll start on that one. I mean, actually, technically, it's what you call cracking. Someone would phone a mobile number, and then you had to phone up that mobile number from another phone.
Right.
And then you'd pick up the answer phone messages. I mean, I never did this. I think it was the Mirror that started it, and then the News of the World copied them. But it wasn't technically hacking, it was cracking. So if people were stupid enough to leave an answer phone message, they'd kind of phone it and they'd get hold of it. They were using a lot of private investigators. And as someone said to me years ago that they wanted me to do PR for them, they were like, these guys are better than the CIA because the News of the World had thousands of people all over the country, all over the world that were phoning in with stories, but they were getting paid. So they're better than any spy agency because everyone that's phoned got hundreds or thousands of pounds. So you got prison officers, police, just everyone in every, section of society.
It's kind of a private spy agency.
Yeah. That's the real reason they wanted to shut it down, because News of the World was too powerful, because they were exposing people that didn't want to get exposed, so they wanted to bring it all back under government control again. The media.
Yeah. They wanted that. It was the toy that they wanted to play with, that they wanted to have, and now they've got.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, you can't have. It's the same situation here in the U.S. where you've got all these people doing independent media, and you can't have that going on outside of the state control, and that's why they're ramping up this whole idea of, it's fake news that got Trump elected. It's fake news that did this. It's fake news that caused this guy to go crazy and shoot people. It's fake. So we got to have Facebook and Google and Snopes. These two fat asses are going to police what's on the internet, right? I thought it was great too that Snopes guy got caught with his hookers and stealing $100,000. That was great.
Yeah, what a show.
The Daily Mail covered that. I mean, that's how hypocritical these people are. As bad as the old mainstream media was, and they were doing lots of bad things, but it wasn't. It was still quite honest in a kind of yellow journalist kind of way, What I mean?
Now, so I'm sure you've both got crazy stories. We were talking about a couple of them before we got into this. Tell me maybe 2 or 3 of the craziest shit you've seen.
You go first, Charlie.
I mean, I'll give you, obviously for kind of UK media, just starting with, let's say take a footballer, John Terry, Chelsea player. I was at a party for Loaded magazine, and you're like, can we do a picture? He's like, no. You wander over, you go into the next room, find a couple of glamour girls, and then he's like, can you do one now? I'll just pose you up these girls. He poses up, or he didn't want to, and his mate's like, yeah, do it. And the second you got the picture, he's going to have sex with one of them, which he did. And then the next day you get a phone call from the newspapers. Yeah, we want that picture. You're like, yeah, it's a couple of thousand. So these kind of like little setup kind of things, you know what I mean? That's kind of how it all used to work.
Right.
And obviously that all got a lot harder with privacy laws and all the rest of it. And the big story was obviously the comedy terrorist guy I met in, I think it was 2003 or 2. He'd been at this countryside march thing, dressed up as Bin Laden in drag, wearing a dress.
And makeup.
Yeah, no, because you meet all these characters, because obviously you've got to have a lot of people tipping you off. It doesn't matter if they're drug dealers or whoever, you know, all these kind of weird characters. As soon as you see someone, you've got to talk to them, you've got to get them on side to give you stories. So I'm like, yeah, he looks kind of crazy. Keep an eye out for him. Then I saw him on Oxford Street a few months later when I was buying the papers late at night. And then we struck up a conversation. He just followed me around for 4 months. He wanted to be famous. Then we went to Royal Ascot, you know, the horse ladies' day. He gate crashed it, turned up again in Bin Laden in drag at Ladies' Day. And then I just picture him. So I've got a picture of him like holding up some girl in a dress at Ladies' Day. The next day that was in the sport newspaper, which was like really crazy, like National Enquirer, alien, you know, like crazy stuff on the moon kind of stuff. Yeah, so he's like, is that it? Is that as famous as I'm going to be? And I was just like, no, careful what you ask for. And then a few days later, he's like, where are you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing, you know, the Prince William wedding, you know, not wedding, 21st birthday down at Windsor Castle. And then he suddenly turns up there and he's dancing around and, you know, we have a drink and I thought that was it. And then he disappears off, you know, to go home. But he's had enough drinks, you know, on the way to the train station to think, yeah, maybe I'll climb over this wall, see where it goes. So he climbs over the wall dressed up in drag. Then I'll ask him on the way, you know, because he's like, oh, I'm lost. I'm trying to find my way back into the party. Kind of pushes his way in. He's had enough drinks to kind of flag it. Then he kisses Prince William on both cheeks and goes and has a drink. And, you know, does this thing from Whittle and I, like that English movie, you know, I want the finest wines known to humanity. And then the security, like, you know, this isn't like a Prince Harry joke taking the piss, this is real, you know, we need to take this guy out. So he's driven off in that Range Rover and outside, because I'm outside just waiting for guests to come out, and you're like, yeah, you feel like there's something going on, and I'd moved down to another gate, and then he kind of drives out, and I get that picture, and he's got, again, the Bin Laden book, and he's looking up in the air like a shoe bomber, he's handcuffed, and obviously no one at that moment knows, you know, who he is except for me, and he's obviously hoping that I'd be there. I didn't know he was going to do it. He didn't know he was going to do it. But you've just got that picture, and obviously the story, you know, again is worth tens of thousands of dollars because, you know, everyone thinks, Jesus, he could have taken out the whole royal family except for Prince Edward, who wasn't there. You know, so everyone thinks it's real. You know, and like, how could he get past security? And, you know, obviously he didn't have any bad intentions, so he did manage to blag it. But that story was debated in Parliament and just went crazy for, like, you know, around the world for 48 hours.
So did he have any kind of political perspective where he was intentionally satirizing, I guess? So does he see it all as pretty ridiculous, or was he just on a whim drunk and just did it? Or
well, that was one sort of kind of mute point on it. You know, at the end of it, he said he just did it to promote his Edinburgh Fringe show, and I was like, you've already kind of lost the point on that. You know, you've already done the biggest show you're going to do in your life. You can't say you did that to promote your Fringe show. And I was like, that was you missed that one strapline of your life where you could have just said anything. You could have said the most profound, weird thing, and people were being like, wow, that was so cool. And then you just said, I did it to promote my show, and that was like the most boring thing you could have said.
Yeah, I you know, having known or having met Aaron a couple of times, and I was at a wedding when I heard on the radio what had happened, and I just had a feeling in the pit of my stomach. I just thought, Charlie's got something to do with that. That's definitely got something to do with Charlie. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem to me to be in any way kind of politicized, or, you know, he's literally just fame and celebrity and vacuous kind of, you know, whatever. There's nothing deep and meaningful there.
So it was just satire, or it was just,
definitely.
Comedy terror, I guess. That's
what he did make good. He made good money out of it. Again, he probably made $70,000-$80,000 out of that. You know, you sell your story, and he made good money on that as well. Wow. So there was still, you know, he never knew that was going to happen. Obviously, once he'd done it, you know, he sold the story, but that wasn't the intention to make money. It's just like you're pissed, and it's just sort of things that kind of crazy English people do, you know, when they're pissed, you know what I mean?
Let me ask you this question. Well, Bali, do you have any crazy stories beyond that before I...
Yeah, I mean, not really, not as crazy as that. But one summer I was in Soho and I saw Yoko Ono drinking on her own in a cafe, and I said to Charlie, I said, "Oh, I've got Yoko Ono. This is going to be a great shot. I'm going to get exclusive on her. This is going to be brilliant because she just looked something looked wrong with her face. You know, I don't know, maybe she just recently had surgery or something like that." And I hadn't seen her in the news for a while, and she just looked like she was on her own, you know, maybe sitting with a couple of friends.
Isn't that just her normal face?
Yeah, well, maybe. So I told Charlie, and Charlie's like, "Oh, hang on a minute, I'll come down, you know, I'll back you up." And I'm like, no, I'm going to get this one on my own. You know, I was really kind of G'd up for it. And literally, she came out, and I because it was 4 frames a second, so 1, 2, 3, and literally as the fourth shutter flicked, her Eastern European bodyguard, who was absolutely massive, just picked me up by the throat and held me against the wall while I was kicking and screaming and taking photographs of the pavement. And I literally got one shot, and it was pretty useless. So I should have listened to Charlie's advice on that one. So it's quite dangerous out there as well. You know, people swing for you if you've got, or used to, if you've got a camera. So, you know, it's not without its pitfalls, you know.
So, well, let me ask you this: that I was at a Whole Foods recently, and I looked over, and Miley Cyrus was standing there, and she looked pretty rough, looked like she'd been partying the night before. And the thought crossed my mind: if I had snapped some pictures, would it have been sellable? But then I started thinking, does it even work like that anymore, given the fact that everybody has cell phones now? I mean, do you still sell these pictures to, the Daily Mail or whatever?
Yeah, it went from like tens of thousands to tens of pounds. So something that could have made you 10, 20 grand would probably make you $10, $20, and you might get sued. You know what I mean? So,
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think in LA the privacy laws are different. You know, your amendment kind of laws. So there's probably a much bigger video market. TMZ, TMZ, that kind of stuff. There's probably still a lot of money in that for the right video.
What about this aspect of it? I was watching a documentary, Star Suckers, I think, and there's a section where they deal with PR and paparazzi. And if I recall, I think somebody makes the argument that a lot of celebrities will sort of cultivate a good relationship with, or try to, because even if it's perhaps a somewhat scandalous story, I mean, that is exposure. I mean, isn't that thousands of dollars, millions of dollars possibly worth of advertising? I mean, so is a lot of this, I don't want to say completely staged, but I mean, wouldn't Orlando Bloom kind of want, to be caught in a situation?
Yeah, I mean, that was brilliant PR because it was a beautiful picture. It wasn't like a nasty picture or anything, and it wasn't scandalous. I mean, at that time, actually, the background of that story, she was going out with, who was the actor, Ollie, that she was going out with? He had an affair with the nanny.
Not Hugh Grant, was it?
No.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't remember.
But yeah, her sort of boyfriend had just had an affair with the nanny, so they'd sort of split up a little bit.
Oh, Jude Law.
Jude Law.
Yeah. Jude Law, yeah. So there was that kind of angle to the story, and then she was with her old kind of lover type thing. But yeah, that could have been set up by PR, but it wasn't. And the inside guys couldn't do it because they didn't want to upset the PR. But because I was an outsider, I could get away with it. But if I was on the inside, I couldn't have done that. So that's where the paparazzi used to make a lot of money, because they could do things that the insider PRs couldn't do, insider photographer kind of thing. But then, like you say, the money was in kind of working with the PRs on these big stage ones. But once you go down that road, you could never kind of do anything that you shouldn't do, if you know what I mean. So you're either kind of on the inside or the outside. And there was a bit of crossover, so I'd do kind of small PR jobs that you wouldn't do. They wouldn't let you near any of the big names.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because they would want to control the narrative.
Yeah,
right.
And then I wouldn't have been trusted to be near someone big. I could have done a good sort of job on it, and I did do good jobs on kind of smaller names. And, like I could make someone famous, like the Comedy Terror. So if you came to me and you were kind of nobody, I could make you famous from nothing. But someone who's already mega famous, they needed like a much safer pair of hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's actually what's in that documentary is a firm, I think, I forget where it was, maybe in LA, where they, if somebody was up and coming, they would hire them to, stage scenarios and cause this situation just to get their name in the news.
Yeah, I mean, I do like we'd do kind of quite cheeky stuff. Girls would get out of the car, flash their knickers, the kind of glamour girls. And then obviously you get these viral memes, the one I mentioned, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan. A lot of these top girls would go out as, like, no knickers on, and then this meme would go out that would just kind of look a bit scandalous, but they're still allowing that to happen. But
that's what I was going to say, yeah.
Say that they were doing it. I mean, one time I was at a club, I think, can't remember who I was waiting for, but this girl walked past, and she was like a stripper or whatever, and she was like being a bit cheeky, and I was like, why don't you take your clothes off? And she was like, whatever. And then she just stripped naked in the middle of the street and climbed up on a taxi.
This is in Piccadilly Circus, right?
No, it was down in South Kent, that one.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And, again, the Germans love that. It's like the Germans or Japanese or Australians, they love these kind of crazy street kind of videos. It's just some kind of mad-looking stripper just totally naked running around the street and dancing on a taxi. And then the police come along and she got arrested. You know what I mean? It's just kind of insane, some of it's kind of real, some of it's not real. But that's, as you say, from when you've done it, you kind of know what's real and not, what's set up.
Right.
And when it went seriously kind of wrong was Piers Morgan, who talks a lot in America on that show.
Right.
He did this fake interrogation story in the Mirror where they had these British soldiers that were supposedly beating up Iraqis. But I knew that picture was fake, and then he lost his job. So that's when celebritism kind of went big time into politics and real news. So I think the Iraq War is the real kind of crossover where things changed.
The Iraq War?
Yeah, that's because he'd done a fake story, and then which is pretty dangerous. You're kind of like putting out pictures and then are not real,
right.
And then you're putting people's lives in danger. So same thing, Dr. Kelly, the guy who got killed in the UK, we'd done like a spoof story the day before with a friend dressed up as Saddam Hussein chasing Alistair Campbell down the street, and then a day later the guy committed suicide. So that looked like we were doing a PR job, but we weren't. We were taking the piss, but you wouldn't know that. Is that the government doing it to kind of soften it before someone kills themselves, or is that done as a joke? So that's where it can be quite hard to tell. You know what I mean?
Right. Your connection is getting a little fuzzy there. I wanted to ask too about the borderline, the threshold between what's entertainment and what is morally bankrupt, I guess you could say. I mean, in other words, having been in this role yourself, at what point did you feel like, okay, this is just fun, this is satire, this is me, making the rent, right? As opposed to like what goes over the line? Is there any kind of barrier? Did you just sort of play it by ear?
I think kind of when you're no longer making the rent and you're about to get sued and the stories are kind of boring, then it becomes quite toxic. Because when there's no money, it's not fun, and
right.
The news is not even that real anymore. That's when it's kind of the over the line is the point at which it's not even kind of realistic to do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think two things happened. I think really people in the UK, protesting in 2003 against the Iraq War, the media really, the mainstream really started to lose credibility at that point because the mood in the country was so against it, and we didn't know what we do now about WMDs, but we had a suspicion. And Robin Cook, who was a Labour politician at that time, resigned, and then he started to reveal in the Guardian, little tidbits about the fakery going on.
He ended up dead, right?
Yeah, he was disappeared on a Scottish mountain. Yeah, so you know, and that continued sort of 2005, and then when you got to 2007, the technology and the camera phones and everything had kind of put the ball firmly in the establishment's court to really build on their own fake narratives and to take it from there. And that's kind of where the switchover happened, I think. And that's when they started attacking phone hacking and the closure of the News of the World and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it all kind of followed on logically.
And the law, the protection from harassment came in, which was to protect corporations from kind of protesters and also genuine people, you know, were being harassed. So then there was a couple of companies, this is what made a massive change, Carter, Ruck and Schilling, so they would sue anyone who kind of did anything to celebrities. So then it became like a massive industry that kind of went into everything. So you'd have these injunctions and the super injunctions. The super injunction, you weren't even allowed to talk about the injunction. So everything got legally very toxic because there was a lot of money in just suing the media. I think the News of the World had to pay, or News International had to pay hundreds of millions, you know, for legals, you know what I mean? So it was no longer viable to kind of run exciting stories anymore because you just get sued. So they just sued them to death, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you see with the Saddam character is great because it's so. What people don't understand is that the fakery is used to convince people of the need for the war. Now, I mean, you guys are hip to that, but if you want to understand why fake news, quote unquote, is relevant, why it matters, why it's necessary to understand the fakery aspect of things, is that the establishment generally will find it much easier to fake something and then use that as the PR or the means by which
pretext
to sell a war, right? Like that they put the babies into the incubators and threw them out on the ground. She's an actor, right? She's like she's an actress. She's the daughter of like a Kuwaiti or Bahrain ambassador, right? She's totally fake. But this was used. This actually convinced people, you know, in Western media and in the Western population to accept this weapons of mass destruction narrative, which is obviously, we all know this is after the Chilcot inquiry. We knew it before, but right, it's even admitted now.
Yeah. It's all out in the open now that, you know, the fakery that they were using to as the pretext for war, and they've done it historically. You just go back, you know, for the last 100 years, 200 years, even you can just see it.
Yeah, Lusitania, Tonkin. I mean, you've got all of these examples of either false flags or just made up whole cloth out of thin air. Pulled out of the establishment's butt, and it justifies a supposed, giant conflict, giant war, and that's exactly what we've seen in the Syria situation with Aleppo. You know, Vanessa and Eva Bartlett have been calling that out excellently. Patrick, Tom Duggan, and all when I put together that video last weekend with a bunch of Vanessa clips and RT clips, I was actually astounded. I thought I kept up with this stuff. I was actually astounded at the number of staged clips out of Aleppo. It's just like, and Syria, it's unbelievable. I couldn't even keep up with them, right? There's this mannequin one, there's the Syrian boy, there's it's like every day there's a new one being uploaded to the, the white helmets or whatever. So this stuff matters, it's relevant, and they use this stuff, to further these oligarchic.
The white helmets is just a media outlet,
right?
It's just its main goal is propaganda, right?
Charlie, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Yeah. Well, no, that's what you. I was listening to going back to the Weird Tales from the Canyon, one of your previous podcasts. Where what's the son, the singer? His father was the admiral in charge of starting the Vietnam War.
Jim Morrison, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's when celebrities became totally sort of weaponized by the CIA, really, wasn't it? In that time.
I think so. I think he makes a good case for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Laurel Canyon stuff.
Right.
For example.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, like in your podcast, Best as a Celebrity, and a lot of them are dying off in 2016 because they were only created sort of 40, 50 years ago. So, of course, a lot of them are all dying off now, but there's thousands to kind of replace them, but they're just not that talented. They're not David Bowie or Prince or whatever now. They're all just Big Brother kind of rejects, and they just produce hundreds of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a factory where they're just kind of churned out. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like fruit. They go off very quickly these days. They don't seem to have some like deep creative, kind of integrity at all. And that's why they don't last, because they just go off like bad fruit.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there is creativity in Prince and in David Bowie. I don't see much of that in these people that are put out there. They're like products, basically. I liken them to the pop version of fast food, right? What fast food and junk food is to the mouth, right? This stuff is to the ears and the eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys would agree that this stuff is kind of put out there on purpose? Like sort of this Tavistock, CIA, psych warfare, Pentagon type stuff, which that's my view. I think that they really do.
Yeah. It's just Coca-Cola for the brain. I mean,
right.
It just rots your brain. And it keeps people pretty sedated and excited. I don't know if people are really that excited or sedated by it now, but they used to get kind of excited by it. And,
right.
It's a massive, what they call weapons of mass distraction, isn't it? It's just very distracting from people seeing the truth. And I mean, also as a Buddhist, there's the kind of, for me, there's the spiritual truth and there's the kind of reality truth. So people don't kind of go inward and start thinking about something spiritual, and at the same time they don't even know what's going on around them in a reality sense, so they're completely lost. You know what I mean?
Well, I thought it was interesting in your bio you mentioned, I'm not personally a Buddhist, but I do appreciate this aspect of Eastern thought or Eastern theology as a whole. I think you see this throughout, be it or Eastern Orthodoxy, be it Greek philosophy, or be it Far Eastern thought. This idea that what's around us is not always the truth, right? What we're presented with to the senses is not always necessarily the essence of what is reality. And you say in your bio, you say that the Yellow Dragon philosophy places great emphasis on realizing that everything around us is an illusion, and that as humans we are controlled by our desires through our perception of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch, and thought that we perceive right to be reality. But there's a deeper aspect to truth, and I think this is something that Plato was talking about, that the changing flux, right, that we kind of see out there in the world, this celebrity glitz and glam nonsense, which is, thank God, dying away. Hopefully, that is not reality. It's not the real world. And one of the roles or functions that a paparazzo has, I think, performed in a good way is to show us that these people are not gods. These people are not, quote, stars. They're actually just human beings, right? So you're sort of pulling the curtain away, and we're seeing the man behind the curtain, and he's not very attractive, right? He's sort of like an old Bill Cosby character or something back there who's like drugging women and banging them behind the curtain as he's playing Mr. Oz or something. That's not Bill Cosby.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I saw CNN on the morning of the Trump election, and you should have seen some of the TV over here. When the Brexit news came through, it was incredible. No politicians just didn't want to go on camera. They didn't want to talk about it. And then like 2 or 3 days later, they roll out a minor politician to come and cry on TV, right. Because the man behind the curtains was just lost. He just didn't know what to do for quite a number of days. And it was quite satisfying to watch it, actually. I quite enjoyed it in a selfish kind of way.
Maybe it was on your podcast or the Boiler Room one, but basically it wasn't. A lot of people aren't voting for Trump, or they're not even necessarily voting for Brexit. They're just voting just because they don't want the status quo, you know what I mean? And the people in control still don't understand that. And it's going to keep on happening around the world. They just don't get it, you know what I mean? It's not because they're like racist or far right. The majority of people are just completely normal, and they just want their own sort of political autonomy. They don't want to be too controlled, but then that's changed into they're just ignorant or racist or whatever, or which is totally untrue most of the time. I mean,
you've been listening to my interview with former Paparazzo Charlie Pycraft and Bali from the UK. the conspiracy realist. And we've been discussing the influence of the paparazzi and celebrity culture on mass culture and dissecting that. To hear the rest of the interview, which is another 30 or so minutes, go to Jay's Analysis and subscribe for $4.95 a month or for $60 a year, where you get access to all of my archives, interviews, talks, and lectures. You also can order my book at my website, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film. Thank you for listening.